This is an interview about the new Sony FX6.
This is a CineD Gear News video.
Welcome everybody to this CineD interview with Jan from Sony. How are you, Jan?
I'm very well, thank you. Hi, Nino.
Hi. So Jan, I think with the FX6, although I only tested a pre-production sample, I think it's fair to say that Sony really managed to, produce a little powerhouse camera here that is really fully featured, full frame sensor, autofocus. What was the thought process behind releasing such a really powerful little camera at this point in time?
So yeah, thanks a lot for the praise, first of all. It's true that the FX6 has been packed with a lot of things. The very logic of this product starts from the FS5. So we took basically the concept of compacity and modularity that was a very big successful part of the FS5, and the full frame becoming more and more popular in terms of look and taste in image was a kind of obvious direction to take on the FX6. And if you look a little bit at the philosophy of the cinema line, it's three pillars that are basically the cinematic look, the operability for professional users, and reliability. And that's the three pillars we have been thinking on the FX6. And I like to take it like that, thinking about FX6, taking, the color management of the Venice, taking the operability of the FX9 and the capacity of the FS5 series, and taking the tech of the Alpha 7S Mark III with the latest processor, the Beyond XR, the autofocus capability, and image quality processing. That's what I think is behind the FX6.
Perfect. Can you give me a rundown for people who really haven't heard about the camera before of the specs and features of the FX6?
Yeah, so capacity modularity is number one, I would say, associated to the cinematic look I was mentioning about the cinema line. So you will find out the S709 M-LUT, you will find the S-Cinetone baked-in profile. In number three, I think we'd have to talk about image quality. So the 4K 422 120p, that is all intra as well. You will find in there the DCI format. You have professional codecs with a high dynamic range, 15 stops, and so on. Then I would mention probably the autofocus. AF has changed so much in the past year. So the intelligence that has been put in the development of 7S will bring this hybrid AF in the FX6 with eye tracking. So it becomes really a fantastic tool for professional videographer now. And finally, my last fifth point would probably go for the neutral density filter with the automated functionality. So that would be, I think, my five biggest highlights on the product.
Absolutely. So, in terms of A7S III compared to the FX6, there are a lot of similarities between the two cameras. Where do you think people would choose an FX6 over an A7S III?
S3 is a mirrorless base body. So with, the ergonomics codes of ILC interchangeable lens camera, meaning with a grip, with a viewfinder, it's very compact. Then as soon as you want to start to do cinematic filmmaking, you need to gear it up. And then this becomes a little bit different product. But when we talk about FX6, it's a grab and shoot camera in the sense that it's ready to go, ready for reportage, ready for documentary, ready for news. Then additionally to that, the DCI, SDI, MFX wrapper, for example. And in the end, you shouldn't forget that there is more than 2,000 euro between the two cameras. So if you don't need this kind of top-up spec and this approach of really serious broadcast filming, I think 7S III would be enough for you.
So I thought actually the price difference is less than that. But what is the suggested retail price of the FX6?
So you're right, it's a little bit less. It's 5,500 expected or estimated retail price without VAT. So we won't be far from the 2,000 mark gap between the two products.
Okay. The menu is very, very new and visual, is something that a lot of people have asked Sony for a long time. So there's actually two menus in the FX6. There's this, I don't know if you call it quick menu, but something that is like a grid system. And then there is, of course, a full menu, which we are familiar with from FX9 and also FS7, FS5. What's the thought process behind that new kind of menu layout?
So I think the first time the menu came out was maybe on the FX9 version 2. And we had very good praise on it. Very simply saying, we decided to keep up with this menu because adapted to the video shooting, movie making. We also have a different menu system on Alpha, but that makes sense because the Alpha camera are hybrid product shooting photo and video. So using the most adapted menu system, I think was quite a logic step to do for us.
You said in the beginning that the FX6 is modeled after the FS5 in form factor, and that is also very clear. The FX9 is kind of the new FS7 Mark II, and the FX6 is the kind of new FS5 Mark II. However, on the FS5, there was still an optical viewfinder at the back of the camera, which is now not there anymore with the FX6. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, you're right. It's not in being included. It's based on customer feedback. So conclusion was, in terms of balance, in terms of compactness, features we wanted to include on the bare body. The priority was other aspect of the product and really focusing on the capacity in the end. So that's the reason, based on this customer feedback and development direction, it was decided not to include the viewfinder indeed.
In terms of RAW, the camera has raw output already built in without any additional firmware updates that are necessary as far as I know. What can you tell me about the raw output?
The raw, you know it very well. It's the same one as you have on the FX9, same one as you have on the 7S III. Nothing different as far as we know concerning third-party usage. It's an output in raw that we know already, that has nothing different from what we have done in the latest product.
Okay, so that I guess will be through the SDI.
Yes, correct.
All right. The camera features HDMI and SDI ports, which is nice, of course, also compared to the A7S Mark III. Can you tell me whether those can be used at the same time, if they both can output 4K at the same time, or is it only one HD, one 4K? Because there have been limitations in Sony cameras like the FS7, for example, in the past. Maybe you have information on that.
Actually, on this product, no limitation. You can use both SDI and the HDMI output, and both would be working in 4K. I think the only limitation you would have is when you're outputting in RAW, then there are some combination that you need to check. But other than that, 4K on the two port is possible, yes.
Another question, there was one really smart design choice on the FS5, which I really liked and I think a lot of people overlooked, and that is having an XLR port also inside the body itself. So you had the top handle on the FS5, which had one XLR, but the second XLR was in the body at the bottom. Now with the FX6, both of the XLRs just already are back on the top handle again, which means when you take off the top handle, you end up not having professional audio inputs in the camera anymore. Is there any other way to get professional audio into the camera?
There has been a debate about the fact that the two XLR were separated. And in a lot of feedback, customer feedback, that was one major issue and confusing area for people, that the ports were not together. So one of the factor of decision was indeed to put them back together in terms of, cable management or connection management and so on. And the other, of course, aspect you will guess it was to make the body smaller, as small as possible in terms of concept and putting some priority. But in the end, you're right, the only audio possibility that you have on the camera is an ambient mono microphone integrated, and you don't have any pro audio in on the body when it's naked. That's true.
There's one huge thing, I'm looking at an FX9 right now, which I'm misusing as a webcam. It's really not doing it justice, but it has a really great autofocus, so I suppose why not? But the one thing as an FX9 owner that really bugs me is the fact that the FX6 supports up to 120 frames per second in full 4K. And I don't have very high frame rates with a full sensor readout. I can't even do 50 or 60p using the full width of the sensor. What do you say to customers of an FX9 who are probably going to complain about this now that the smaller sibling actually has better specs in that regard?
I would say, first of all, technology is advancing. And when we launched FX9, that was over a year ago. And at this time, the new processor engine I was mentioning earlier, the Beyond XR, was not there. So you cannot really blame an FX9 non-having function that was launched a year and a half ago. Having said that, FX9, we have to remember that it's a broadcast working horse. And first of all, the aspect of the FX9, it's a shoulder base, it's a large camera that calls for high production, I would say, production capabilities and rates. Then you mention it's a 6K sensor that delivers oversampled 4K. So you can also think that you will probably have a little bit more crispiness in your pictures. The other point is 6K enables you to have the super certified 4K DCI that you cannot do on an FX6. The other aspect is when you team up the FX9 with the extension, the optional extension, that you would get the RAW format, but you get a lot of additional wireless features, and especially on the XDCam Air broadcast area. That is one of the super strengths of this FX9 product in our lineup.
And on the other hand, one thing we didn't talk about yet with the FX9, of course, to output RAW, you still need the very expensive XDCA unit, which is 2,500 euros, I think. You actually need that in order to be able to output RAW via SDI, 16-bit RAW. On the FX6, this is included, and you don't need any additional purchase with that. What do you say about this?
So if you talk about this extension unit for FX9, I think I touched upon it, but you have all the wireless functionality, streaming function that go with it. You have, the online upload of files or metadata on the cloud. You have all this XDCam Air broadcast functionality that the professional broadcast company are using, I would say, really hardly on the FX9. So it's not just the raw output that you get with the extension, that to put it back in perspective, I would say.
One last question. The FX6 is marketed under Sony's consumer division, whereas the FX9, for example, is marketed under the professional division. However, both of the cameras go under the cinema line of cameras. So why is there a differentiation? Why do you think the FX6 is more of a consumer type camera?
So why FX6 in alpha? I like to think about alpha range very tightly linked to the E-mount system, to what we call one mount. And why we call it one mount? Because it's one lens system that fits all the products, but it fits particularly well the alpha product because the lenses, since the last 5-6 years, we have developed many compact lenses with super high quality. So if you team up a compact body with those lenses, you get super powerful tool that works with autofocus, but in a compact design. And I think the FX6 essence is the compacity, and capacity that leads to storytelling, to creative approach, because of the things you can do with the body you can't do with a bigger camera. And linked to this E-mount system, this one mount, make it even more exciting product in terms of usability and agility, I would say.
I expect this camera personally to be very successful, actually. I think you're hitting a sweet spot with the performance, the features, and the price point there. Great work, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Nino. See you next time.
Thanks everybody for watching. Stay tuned to CineD for a lot more reviews. Also check out our FX6 initial hands-on review, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you are not subscribed yet. Thanks.